Hi guys, so we're on Sky Scott can't even speak. Sky Song, chapter 16, back to Esker. Esker ground her words out over her fear. We can take it, all of us together, if we... There was a knock at the door and Flint leapt backwards. Erkenbears don't knock. The knocking came again, an urgent pounding against the wood. Esker swallowed. This one does. Open up. The voice on the other side of the door was a throaty growl. I'm a friend. Esker slid a glance to Flint. You're absolutely positive it was a bear? Yes, Flint spluttered. I saw it. There was a loud thud and the door swung open, clattering back against the hideaway wall. An enormous Erkin bear reared before them, its coat shining silver in the early evening light, its mouth a gaping maw of daggered teeth, and suddenly a new scent hung in the air, one of ice and snow and, very faintly, blood. Blue crawled through beneath the table with Pebble, but Flint and Esker stood side by side, their weapons raised. Esker tried to think as Balapan had taught her, calmly, boldly. She brandished her spear. Come any closer, and we'll stick you with these then. And then a strange thing happened. The bear's head flopped back, and a man's face appeared beneath it. A long white beard tipped with ice and skin, as gnarled as a washed-up timber piece. Esker peered closer. This was an old man wearing an Erkin bear pelt. But, Flint blinked, you were a bear outside. I know you were, the way you moved and growled. What an extraordinary thing to say, the old man murmured. My pelt must have confused you. But as he spoke, his breath puffed out into a mist of ice, and behind it, Esker could have sworn she saw him wink. Flint rubbed his eyes. And now? But there are no grown-ups left out here. The Ice Queen took them all to Winterfang after the battle. The old man brushed the snow up from his furs. Didn't take me. Esker watched the man carefully. His eyes gleamed like drops of polished night. His beard was as white as his fur, and his large weathered hands could easily have passed for paws. She had seen the Erkin bears out on the ice while locked in Winterfang Palace, and watched the skull-crushing blows they could wield. She had heard their grunts and roars too, and as the old man spoke, Esker thought she heard something of that wildness in his voice. Blue poked her head out from beneath the table. What happening, Flint? I scared. Flint narrowed his eyes at the old man. Who are you, and how do we know we can trust you? Because of your eagle, the man replied. It saw me approach, but it didn't seek to warn you. Esker stiffened. How do you know the eagle's got anything to do with us? I'm closer to the wild beasts than you might think. The old man smiled, and Esker saw gentleness in his midnight eyes. He bent down so that he could see under the table. I mean no harm, little one. You can come out if you want. Blue scooped Pebble into her arms, but stayed where she was. You feed Pebble, he hungry. Again. The old man drew a pouch out of his pocket in his furs. Inside were cubes of frozen meat, and he placed several before Pebble's paws. The fox pup waddled out of Blue's lap, sniffed the meat, and then munched hard before letting out a small burp. Blue grinned. I Blue, boy Flint, best brother in the world, and girl is Esker, she my friend. The old man straightened up. I'm glad to have found you all, for I've things to say that you must hear. Esker half turned so that she could whisper to Flint. We need all the help we can get before we set off for the Nevercliffs, and he's right that Balapan would have warned me if there was dark magic in the air. I think we trust him just for now. Flint nodded to the old man. Take a seat, but if you try anything, remember Esker wasn't lying. We will stick you with the spears in you. They gathered round the table, and though it was an old man that sat in the chair opposite them, Esker couldn't help feeling as if she was in the presence of an Erkin bear, and that made her sit up straighter and listen a bit harder. The visitor leant forward, and his pelt shimmered. My name is Whitefur, and though many know me as the ever-wandering one. Flint turned his knife over in his hand. Which tribe do you belong to? The old man raised his eyebrow. No tribe that you would know of, boy. Flint frowned. Everyone belongs to a tribe. Fur, feather, tusk. That's how it works. He glanced at Esker. I think. Whitefur shook his head. Belonging is not about knowing your tribe. It's about trusting people, whatever their tribe. He paused. There are many ways to belong. Esker's cheeks reddened, because although Whitefur had directed his reply at Flint, something about his words tiptoed close to her heart. I walk with the wild, Whitefur said, with Erkin bears and snowy owls, with wolves and drifting caribous. That's my tribe. He looked at Esker. And I know who you are, child. Esker's pulse thumped. You, like me, a wanderer, someone with an unbreakable bond to the wild. Wanderer. Esker turned the word over in her head. You don't slot into a tribe, perhaps, but you fit in with the wild. You're a part of it. Just look at the bond you share with that eagle. He paused. There are only a handful of us scattered around across the world now, and when the Ice Queen took you, we feared the worst. Esker leant forward, hungry for the truth. Took me from where? From your mother and father. Whitefur looked down. They were wanderers too. Esker's heart fluttered as the pieces of her past gathered closer. Wanderers hear and see other things, miss, Whitefur went on, and we knew from the way the whales sang and the wind blew that night last spring that the Tusk shaman, under the influence of the Ice Queen, killed the Tusk chief. But when your father visited the fur and feather tribes and tried to explain the truth, they wouldn't believe him. He tried to tell them that the only way to defeat the Ice Queen would be to fight back using Erkenwald's magic, but mistrust and suspicion had already started working their way into people's hearts and minds, and before long the bonds between the tribes and the people's belief in Erkenwald's magic had crumbled. When the day of the battle came, the wanderers fought alongside the fur and feather tribes, but we were small in number and unable to conjure enough magic to force the Ice Queen back. Esker bit her lip. My parents fought in the battle? Whitefur nodded. And you did too. You've been wielding bows and arrows since you were tiny, and no matter how many times your parents tried to persuade you to stay hidden that day, they couldn't keep you from their side. You were adamant that you wanted to fight. He looked down and was silent for a few moments. Your mother was killed out on the ice by a wolverine bewitched by the Ice Queen. The old man's eyes softened. She loved you, Esker, with a fierce kind of love that could rattle mountains. Esker felt the room sway. She had had a mother, one whom loved her, but knowing that had come too late. Beneath the table, two little arms wrapped round her legs. Blue couldn't really understand what was going on, but she could sense Esker's sadness, and she held on tight. Whitefur sighed. Blackfina she was called, and she was as much a part of the sea around Erkenwald as the whales that glide through its waves. She understood the underwater songs of orcas and narwhals, and she swam down into the depths with the seals. Esker tried to take it all in, and when she closed her eyes, she saw a woman standing on the cliff top above the ocean. Her long red hair streamed out in the wind, and above her a flurry of kittiwakes cried. The memory slipped from her grasp, and Esker's heart surged with longing. Esker's father, Flint said quietly. Is he still alive? The old man nodded. Wolftooth still lives. Esker slumped back in her chair, because there it was, hope. The knowledge that she had a person out there to call her own. Flint glanced at Esker. We need to find him. But Whitefur shook his head. He's a prisoner in Winterfang Palace. Esker gasped. Her father had been so close to her all those lonely nights and days in the music box, and yet she had never known. What happened? Esker asked. Why did I end up alone in that music box? Because of your voice and all of the possibilities inside it. From the moment you were born and we saw the mark of the sky gods on your neck, we wanderers knew you were special. In the days when the sky gods still danced at night, we used to hear them singing too, and they sang of a child with a voice so powerful it could save Erkenwald if darkness came. Flint turned to Esker. See, he said softly, you were never cursed. You were marked to stand out. Esker felt the weight of Flint and Whitefur's words. For a long time she had hoped she might be able to use her voice for good instead of evil, but now she could feel the Ice Queen stealing it from afar, and if Flint and Whitefur knew that, maybe they'd give up believing in her, and she'd be all alone again. Esker shifted in her seat. The thought of her voice being more powerful than the Ice Queen's staff and anthem and endless dark magic seemed to be growing horribly unlikely. Whitefur went on. The Ice Queen, a fallen star from the Little Bear constellation, was jealous of you from the very start, Esker, and she and her shaman had the deadliest tusk warrior and a pack of wolverines seek you out at the battle. The wolverines wrenched your mother away from you, and when your father realized he had lost Blackfina, he held you close to him and tried to fight on. But the Tusk Warrior was fighting with dark magic on his side, and I remember watching, powerless to help, as he dragged you and your father to the palace. Whitefur met Usker's eyes. The Queen threw your father into the ice towers, and you were shut away in her music box. Later, we wanderers heard your father's voice singing in her choir, but not yours, and we assumed you had been killed. Until a few days ago, when, in the dead of night, your eagle found me whilst I was hunting on the driftlands. It flew round and round until I realized that it was flying in the same pattern each time it circled, the shape of the sky god's constellation, and I knew it was a sign that you might still be alive. I watched the direction the eagle flew off in, then I followed. And when I arrived in this valley a few days later, I remembered the giant's beard, one of the Wolf-Tooth's favourite food stores. Esker brushed a hand against the table leg. Had her pa sat at this very table? Had he slept in the bed she lay down in each night? The possibilities tingled inside her. Then she thought of her ma dying to protect her in the battle at Winterfang, and a lump lodged in her throat. I never asked for any of this, she said quietly. For a voice so dangerous and terrible, it got my ma killed and my pa locked up. Whitefang ran a hand through his beard, and little specks of ice floated the ground. Dangerous, perhaps? Terrible, no. You have a gift, Esker. Your voice has the power to do great things if you use it wisely. But my voice is getting weaker, Esker blurted out. She looked down. Whitefur deserved to know the truth. He was helping her find a way back to her past, and so did Flint. Esker realized now that despite everything, what it might mean for her. Every morning when I hear the Ice Queen's anthem, I feel something cold inside my mouth, like icy fingers trying to reach down my throat and pluck at my words. Whitefur growled, and beneath the table, Pebbles scurried behind Blue. Esker went on nervously. When I escaped from Winterfang, I took the key from the music box with me, but out in the foothills, the Ice Queen snatched it back. She paused. It's cursed, and I know that she planned to give it to the shaman Slither so that he could finish a contraption designed to steal my voice. At the moment, Ice Queen can only weaken my voice, but it won't be long before she finds a way to take it completely. Esker waited for the disappointment that was bound to follow, but where that could have been, she found loyalty instead. Then we have less time than I thought, Winterfur replied. We must act quickly. Esker glanced at Flint. Knowing that the Ice Queen has found a way to steal your voice doesn't change things, he said. We're still in with a chance, however small, of saving Erkenwald. But how can my voice hold back an Ice Queen, a terrifying shaman, and an army of Tuskards when it's growing weaker by the day? Esker cried. Whitefur's eyes glittered. A voice is a mighty thing, Esker. When everything is taken from you, your family, your home, your friends, your dignity, you still have a voice, however weak it sounds. The light from the lamp on the table made shadows flicker on the rocky walls as night folded round the hideaway. And your voice has the power to silence the tribes, command animals, and shake the skies, if you can prove that you are the rightful owner of the Sky Song. But we don't even know what it is, Esker whispered. Whitefur smiled. Many years ago, the North Star blew the legendary Frosthorn to breathe life into Erkenwald, and the Sky Song was the tune the Sky God played on that horn. It was a tune infused with the very greatest magic, and the gods meant for you, the child chosen by them, to find it one day, and to sing it so that hope might come to Erkenwald when darkness closed in, he sighed. But the Ice Queen wants your voice so that she can use it for a very different tune, one full of dark magic that will call the fur and feather tribes in, then tear down the sky gods. Flint took a deep breath, and Esker realized that he too was struggling to understand now. How do we find the Sky Song if it's just a melody? How? Asked Blue from under the table, though the word didn't carry any understanding. It was just an echo, a reminder that she wanted to be heard too. The gods used to sing of Esca's quest. Whitefur drew himself up, and as he looked at Esca, his words came deep and growled. You must find the forgotten frost horn and blow it from the stars before Ice Queen steals your voice. Only then can you unleash the sky song and bring hope back to Erkenwald. See you tomorrow.